I'm Alice. I'm a 35-year-old office worker. Ever since my husband David, who is 2 years younger than me, was transferred, we've been temporarily living with my in-laws. It's strictly a temporary arrangement. David seems to want to continue living at his parents' house, but I want to find a proper home soon and leave the in-laws' place as quickly as possible. The reason is, I just don't get along with my in-laws at all, especially my mother-in-law, Susan. She has always been quite sarcastic, even before our marriage, but it's gotten worse since we started living together. Alice, haven't you gone shopping yet? You've missed the supermarket sale time. You can't even shop efficiently, really. My company allows teleworking, but weekdays are still working hours for me. I can't shop during the supermarket sale times. I've told you many times, Susan, I'm working during the day, so I can't go shopping until after 5:00 p.m. When I say this, Susan retorts, always so high and mighty, and you can't even bear a child. Barren as you are, blaming me as usual. David and I don't have children. We haven't investigated thoroughly at a hospital, so we don't know who is responsible. I wanted children, but considering David's earnings, we couldn't afford expensive infertility treatments. I was already troubled by Susan's sarcasm even before we started living together, but it was better when we lived separately. Living in the same house day and night, unexposed to her sarcasm 24/7. My father-in-law, Mike, while not directly sarcastic towards me, irritates me in a different way. He seems to think that a woman over 30 is an old lady, and now that I'm 35, he treats me like one. Hey, old lady, pass me the ashtray. Why are you wearing a skirt? No one wants to see an old lady's legs. If I'm an old lady, what does that make him at 60? I want to retort. I'm not the type to take things lying down, so each time my in-laws are rude to me, I talk back. But this leads to being labeled as disrespectful, and our relationship worsens. The atmosphere at home has become constantly tense, and I'm feeling the limit of living together. However, David has been busier with work since the transfer, with more weekend work and business trips, so we haven't been able to discuss moving out. Alice, I have another business trip this weekend again. You just had one. Your new branch, sure, requires a lot of travel. Can't help it, right? The job changes with the workplace. True, but it's changed too much. Because of this, we haven't been able to look for a place to move out, even though it was supposed to be a temporary stay at the in-laws. What if we end up living here indefinitely? I'm scared of that. But one day I was taking laundry out of David's bag when he returned from a business trip, and I found a piece of paper in the pocket. It was a receipt for an online reservation from a travel site. I thought it was a flight and hotel reservation for his business trip, but when I looked, I was shocked. There I found a printed reservation for a hotel stay that included tickets to a theme park, and it was for 2 people. The date was yesterday, meaning it was the same day David was supposedly on a business trip. Of course, David's company doesn't have any dealings with theme parks. They deal with seafood, which, yes, is related to the sea, but that's irrelevant. In other words, David pretended to go on a business trip, but actually spent 2 days at a theme park. The reservation for 2, it's safe to assume he went with a woman. As I stood there in shock, I could hear David humming in the bath. It's a world of laughter. It's a theme song of a well-known attraction. He must be humming it naturally, recalling his time at the theme park. Though I'm sure that attraction isn't at the park he visited, but it seems on a fun illicit trip like that, the attractions don't matter. I was furious and thought about confronting David in the bath, but just then, David's phone rang out of sheer irritation and lacking calm judgment. I answered the phone in anger. Hello? I heard a young woman's voice for a moment, and then the call abruptly ended. No way. I was certain the call just now had to be from the woman who went to the theme park with David. In other words, David's mistress. When she heard a woman's voice, she must have panicked and hung up. I checked the call history on David's phone. David isn't very security conscious, so he hardly sets a complex password. Guessing it's probably his birthday in 4 digits, I hit the jackpot. The phone unlocked immediately, but looking inside his phone made my head spin. The phone was brimming with undeniable evidence of his affair. The photo gallery was filled with selfies he took with a young woman, all taken on dates when David was supposedly on business trips or working on weekends. To leave such explicit photos, he was being recklessly careless. Checking the call history again, I saw Emily listed, so I searched for the same name in the SNS friends list and opened their chat. "David, I love you. I can't wait to become your wife." This woman, Emily, seemed to be hoping to marry David. A home wrecker, is she? While I was agonizing, David came out of the bath. "Ah, I feel so refreshed," as he casually dried his head with a towel. I confronted him. "Refreshed? What part of you is refreshed? It seems you've been quite refreshed in various ways, haven't you, eh? Who's Emily?" Oh, David was visibly shaken when I suddenly mentioned his mistress's name. "So it's true. You lied about business trips and were actually traveling alone with a woman named Emily. I can't forgive you for all these lies. How did you, what the?" I showed him the evidence on his phone. "This phone has all the evidence I need. You snooped through my phone. That's a violation of privacy." A man who cheats and has such a lack of moral sense complaining about privacy invasion is laughable. If you didn't want it to be seen, you should have set a better password before getting married. I made a promise with David. That promise was to never cheat. If either of us cheated, it would be an instant divorce. I declared that to David, of course. Started with her sarcasm as soon as she saw me. Since David is here, they must already know about his affair and the divorce. Shouldn't they apologize or say something before making sarcastic remarks? But instead of apologizing, Susan said something unbelievable. "Well, it's good. I'm glad you're finally leaving. I didn't want to see your face anymore, so it was good you weren't here until night." "What do you mean by that?" I asked as Susan grinned smugly. "Just what I said. I've been sick of seeing your face. Even though David finally came back to us, you were in the way. I tried to drive you out with my nagging, but you with no charm just talked back. So I had to use my last resort." "Last resort." Susan smiled cunningly. "You know the name of David's girlfriend, right?" "Yes, Emily, I believe." "Haha, well, I have a friend at my social club, Catherine, and her daughter is a very polite and charming young lady, 25 years old, 10 years younger than you, young enough to have plenty of children." Then Susan revealed something shocking. "So I introduced David to Catherine's daughter." I was astounded. I couldn't believe Susan would say such a thing to me. "You mean to tell me, Susan, that you orchestrated David's affair?" "Oh, don't make it sound so bad. I just made an introduction," Susan said brazenly. A mother leading her son to cheat and proudly telling this to her son's wife. How terrifying a mother is she? "Well, it had to be done. David is an only child, and we need him here. If you had just born a child, I might have accepted you, but you just worked, never having a baby." Mike nodded in agreement beside her. So Susan's actions were with Mike's knowledge. "Do you understand? A 35-year-old woman who can't bear children is no longer needed. Now that you understand, leave quickly." Susan pointed her finger at me triumphantly. After a moment of silence, I said, "I see. I understand your thoughts very well. As you wish, I'll leave. I'll take all my belongings with me." Yes, as you please. You don't have much anyway. Shall I send them for you?" Susan said, smirking. Though she knew nothing, the real person to laugh was me. "No, it's fine. Don't worry, I've already arranged everything." "Huh?" Susan looked surprised that I wasn't crying or losing my composure. Besides, Susan's actions only strengthened my resolve to leave that toxic environment behind. I already knew that you were aiding David in his affair, I retorted at Susan. What do you think I was doing all day today? If it were just preparing paperwork for divorce, it wouldn't have taken this long. I spent the entire day arranging the move and meeting with Emily. What? Wait, you met with Emily? David asked in a panic. What's it to you? Did you think I wouldn't have a word with her after being cheated on right under my nose? When I checked your phone yesterday, I made sure to take down her number. I spoke with a sense of resolve. Poor Emily, though. When I called her saying I'm David's wife and I'd like to meet, she was so shocked. Apparently you lied to her about being single. I told her everything. David, Susan, and Mike were stunned. They never imagined I would do all this in just one day. Emily was so upset when she realized she was the other woman without knowing it. Catherine was furious too with you too. She even talked about suing you for marriage fraud. I felt so sorry for her that I promised to help her in any way I could. What? David was trembling. Susan was equally shocked, since Emily was so unwittingly involved. I've decided not to demand any compensation from her. Instead, I'm going to increase the amount of compensation from you, David, and you too, Mike and Susan. Compensation. Why should we pay compensation? Mike blurted out in panic. David alone would be one thing, but we are not involved, Susan added hastily. It seems they expected their son to pay compensation for his affair, but they never dreamed they would be asked to pay as well, thinking they could benefit without any consequences. There's no such convenient story. Of course, the mental anguish from your harassment as in-laws is reason enough for compensation, don't you think? I smiled dismissively, and Mike fell silent, grumbling. And have you forgotten my profession? I work at a law firm. I'll consult with Michael, the head attorney, and see how much compensation we can extract. Of course, I had already contacted Michael at the law firm where I work earlier today. What? Then the sound of a car stopping at the front gate was heard. Ah, they're here. Hey, they're the moving service. I smiled broadly and headed to the entrance. Thank you for coming so late. Sorry for the sudden request. No problem. We had a slot open for the night service. It worked out well for me, too, since I finished my errands late. Please start the work and be careful with the fragile items. As I invited them in, several movers entered the house, starting to pack up my belongings. Wait a minute. Following my instructions, the movers efficiently packed my belongings, not just my clothes, books, and computer, but also the appliances from the living room and kitchen. Hey, you guys, don't take that. That's ours. Nope, these are all mine. I brought them into this house when I moved in with David. When David and I initially moved in, the in-laws' house only had old appliances. As someone who loves gadgets, I couldn't bear it and brought my own appliances from my previous apartment. Now, Susan had grown accustomed to them, mistakenly thinking they were theirs: the robot vacuum, cordless cleaner, the fancy oven that could do various types of cooking, the IH cooking heater, the negative ion hair dryer, and the espresso machine. You're planning to take everything away. How greedy. Susan lunged at me, but David stopped her. Mom, it can't be helped, but all those things belong to Alice. It seemed David had resigned himself. However, Susan wasn't ready to give up yet. You can't go back once you've experienced the efficiency of modern appliances. If you're dissatisfied, you can always buy new ones, right? Although after paying the compensation, I doubt you'll have the money for luxury appliances. While this was happening, the movers kept carrying out my directed belongings to the truck. Please take these to the address of my new place. I'll be right there. I watched as the moving truck drove off, then got into my car. Where is that truck going? David asked. Where to? My apartment, of course, the one I lived in before you were transferred. The apartment I bought when I was single was put up for sale with a real estate agent when David got transferred. However, because the asking price was too high, it never sold, and I still hadn't let it go. The agent kept suggesting to lower the price, but I'm glad I didn't. Who would have thought it would come to this? I fastened my seatbelt and chuckled. But maybe deep down I anticipated this. David looked confused because I set the selling price higher than the market value to ensure it wouldn't sell so that I could always return to the apartment. David collapsed to his knees when he heard my words. "You heartless woman." I was pushed over by Susan, who charged at me while yelling, taken off guard by my victory as I groaned in pain. Susan tried to throw a cutting board at me for further attack. Suddenly, a black figure collided with her, and with a cry of, "Ah!" she fell to the ground. "Thank you, Midnight." I held onto the stray cat Midnight as I quickly got into the moving truck and sped away from Susan. I don't know why Midnight was there, but given his strong sense of justice, he must have come to rescue me. I'll give him some treats later. Afterward, David and I divorced. My law firm filed for compensation from David and his parents. Michael, the head attorney, took the case for almost no fee, using it as practice for the young associates. Even with the young lawyer in charge, I felt secure with Michael's support. Michael himself took on Emily's lawsuit. Given the severity, he's pursuing both criminal and civil charges. It's been a while since he's dealt with a criminal case, so he's eager. After paying the compensation to Emily and me, David's parents will probably have to sell their house, and that still might not be enough. The thought of those three facing a life of debt and poverty almost makes me smirk. Now single, my life without dishonest David and his parents feels like heaven in comparison. For a while, I'll enjoy a carefree single life in my apartment with Midnight, the stray cat I brought with me.